Joining me on the line this morning, it's our old friend Julian Raven. Julian, so good to hear from you. I saw you all weekend, all over Facebook, all over the media. Congratulations.
Thank you so much, Frank. It's great to be here and to be on your show again. And yeah, it's been a monumental experience.
And let's talk about the beginning of it. So people that didn't hear me talk about it so far, Julian was at CPAC. Probably any article you read had the Trump painting in the background at some point. So what led up to your trip to CPAC?
Well, it's been a long journey, Frank. I mean, it's been 3 years in the making. I applied to CPAC in 2017 after the whole debacle with the Smithsonian, and that I want to share, obviously, the update on that with you. That was the beginning of the year in 2017. Didn't get even a reply. I applied the next year, 2018. Didn't get not even a reply. And I just applied again this year, and the same again. And this year, within 3 days, I got an email response. I'm like, oh my goodness! And that's just the beginning of a long dialogue because they vet you. You got to be vetted up. The hub. They try to separate themselves to a degree as far as the ideological responsibility of the breadth of ideas that are presented in the CPAC hub. They try to give more freedom to people there, and they disassociate themselves from it somewhat. But they still, you're completely vetted to be there. And I was amazed finally to get a response and finally to get a conversation where, wow, they're listening to the ideas that I have. And then, originally, I was asking to display the painting some of the places, so massive, have it on display. And they say, well, we don't want to display it, basically, because art is very new for CPAC, which is part of this conversation that we're having. But then the opportunity to display as a vendor was presented, and that was huge.
And just so people are aware, if they're new to the program, tell us how big is the painting that you had to ship from here to CPAC?
Oh, yeah, it's huge. It's 8 by 16 feet with the setup, with the wall. I mean, there's a 4-piece wall that I built together, and the lighting. I upgraded my whole display. I had new LED lighting. You probably noticed if you looked at the pictures. They were it was unbelievable how well this thing photographed. I'd never seen. I worked so hard the week getting it out of there because I realized my painting was falling short because the lighting is so critical to see a work of art properly. And it's such a massive painting that you've got to get light all over it and different temperatures of light. Some areas needed the warm lighting, like on Trump's hair and the golden areas of it. And then other areas, like the eyes or the aspects of the face, needed the cool lighting. So I had warm, cool lighting spotted all over this thing. It was spectacular, Frank. Absolutely spectacular. And it photographed like that. So the moving of it was a big deal. And I did it. But what was interesting is the requirement they had as far as, because it's all union controlled down there, it's massive union. They said, you cannot use power tools to assemble this. And if it takes more than an hour, you have to hire us at like $300 an hour. To assemble this thing. And so I had to remake it and put like these toggle clamps so it was totally screw-free. And any bolts that I used, I had to use a ratchet with so I could assemble it myself. I put it on wheels. Myself and my 16-year-old daughter set this thing. Frank, I had to put 2 winches on the back of that frame and winch the painting up onto the wall.
Oh, man. And you had to do it all within an hour, so I'm sure they have a timer there waiting to make sure it's all done.
Well, they kept driving around and watching me, and it was crazy, the setup. You've got all these vendors, all these, forklifts going everywhere, and people. I mean, it's really quite something, but I had it done within 45 minutes. And they had nothing to say. So I was very happy with that, and it was spectacular. The environment was just spectacular, Frank.
And I think that's why it was featured in so many articles, because it just worked out perfectly. When they'd have the painting in the background and crowd walking by, it really highlighted how massive and how breathtaking the painting itself is. What did you, and Julian Raven is our guest this morning, what did you find the reception to be when people came up to you and talked to you about it? Was it all positive?
It was unbelievable, Frank. I mean, I obviously, you've been there since the beginning of the story, Frank. You were there since the beginning, since November the 3rd. It was 2015 when we unveiled it. And you saw the beginning now. I've seen this across the country. I've seen the thing with the painting. What a lot of people don't get is that not many people up until this event had seen the painting in person.
Right.
In Politicon in L.A., thousands of people saw it, but they were all leftists. Mm-hmm. And it was very few people, conservatives, that would see it. They didn't even have the guts, most of them, to come up to me and say, wow, what a great... I had people hush speaking to me, like, under their breath, oh, my goodness, what a great painting. And then they'd run off, they'd just hurry up. People were afraid to stand near it. Some people did, obviously. So it got coverage, and it got a good response, but nothing compared to this. This was spectacular. The gasps, I have people gasping, and the response, the powerful emotional responses that came, and then the deep questioning. I was sharing constantly the story, the symbolism, the symbolic narrative. Crowds of people would gather. I mean, I'll be posting all the videos. I haven't even when you see in the media, you see most of it as far as images of the image, but you don't see the crowd or the interaction. I mean, there were thousands of people there. The Hub is a peculiar place. The Hub is like, how can I say? You're like the bottom tier of the whole event. The Hub down there, they have all the big media's all upstairs, all the Potomac Ballroom where all the speakers, it's all upstairs, all the celebrities, all the big shots are all upstairs. So the Hub is where all, the common man is. We're and so you're down there, but what is so amazing, this is what all of the media that was there, that came into the Hub, or they came just to see the painting, because the Tony Katz interview that's on Facebook that was broadcast was on Fox News. It was on Dana Perino's show in the morning. It went on virtually immediately. He had come down because someone had said, oh, they're talking about this painting. He came down and did this clip on it, and the coverage was incredible. So when the top echelon media came down with these incredible, expensive cameras, the footage, the HD footage that they took is just spectacular. The creative compositions I had photographers lingering there for hours. They would stand around composing these shots with people in the picture, because if you go online to Getty Images and all these big media sourcing images, they're selling them for $500 a shot.
Wow.
So they can sell an image that has people in it, that has my painting in the background, because it's fair use of the copyright. It's not just a picture of the painting, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So they can do it, and they're selling them. But they were lingering, Frank. They were there for hours, just waiting for the right shot, because the first day it went into Time magazine, and the first day it went into the New York Times, and the coverage was huge. And what I loved was seeing creative photographers spending their time building these incredible compositions, and some of the photographs online are absolutely fantastic.
And how were the interviews themselves? You said Tony Katz and others. Were the interviews, did they ever seem to have a bias towards them, Julian? Or I know Fox probably wouldn't, but did they ever seem to question you?
Yeah, the NPR interview. The NPR interview, and I questioned the guy afterwards. He was like the worst. He never posted the whole interview. He posted like a clip from it. If you go on the NPR, it's a major story that went on every NPR site across this country, but his questioning, he just did not want me to tell him. He didn't want to listen to my answers. He was fishing for answers that he had. It was so clear. But in general, the interviews, and there were obviously leftist interviews there, but not so many. The other side of the interviews were great. So it's pretty much always the same way. You get a bit of both. But there wasn't too much of leftist media there, and if they were, it was like snow melt to them. They were just running the other direction.
Julian Raymond is our guest this morning, and you mentioned this at the beginning, Julian. I want to talk about this for a moment, but on the program, I talk about kind of the culture war so much, and we struggle as conservatives so often getting the message out because we see the bias in Hollywood and, of course, the bias in media that we were just talking about. So it's tough to spread the conservative word. And that's why I was so encouraged when I started to see the interviews that you were getting, because I think you would be a great ambassador for this culture war to say, hey, we need to get art in this movement. We need to have music. We need to have all of it if we're going to spread the conservative movement. So what's your reaction to that, to get art into the conservative movement?
Well, that's exactly it, Frank, and that's where we are in this dialogue. That was my pitch to CPAC, and part of it probably going back. I can't remember the contents of the emails going back a few years, but that was my conversation with them recently, and they said their executive director, his name is Dan Schneider. He understands that the culture war is where the arts need to be as far as to present, because the arguments and back and forth and that all this, people are not persuaded. They're just galvanized more in their position, and we've got to continually present our ideas and our arguments. We have to do that. But then it's like, well, how do we persuade the other side? How do we get them to start thinking? How do we get them to be more open to dialogue? Art is an incredible tool to open up dialogue. And I saw it in the RNC in Cleveland when I had the 8-foot version of the painting in the public square for like 5 days. Mm-hmm. I had so many interactions, and I did it because I wanted to be in the midst of where the opposition was to see how people reacted to the painting and whether they would engage. And they did, and people would come up and they'd curse Trump and they'd say this, that, or the other, but then they'd say, but that's a great painting, man, and then you talk, and Black Lives Matter, they're like, F Trump, and this, and then you're like, but, hey, but let's, and then the conversation would come, and they're like, that's really great, I really appreciate it, and really good conversations. Even when I hung the banner on the front of my studio, mm-hmm. and I got threatened within 5 minutes for hanging it, the same people that were threatening me, within 20 minutes, they were thanking me for the conversation. Mm-hmm. So the picture created a dialogue. They listened, and before long, it was a positive dialogue. Even if you haven't persuaded them, or they've come to you walk away, and it's a respectful conversation. And that's what's so upsetting about the leftists, even locally in Elmira, being blacklisted, the art community blacklisted. They blacklist you because of their hatred of what you represent or what you believe, rather than supposedly being the most open-minded as artists are supposed to be and open to dialogue. They're not. They're completely not. And it's a shame, because dialogue, we could be, Elmira right now being, I was laughing while I was there, Frank. Elmira's in the national news. They're like, where are you from? And I'm from Elmira. They're like, Elmira? And I said, yeah, we're in the national news. We're one of 2 cities in recession in the entire nation. I know. And I said at the same time, I said, yeah, but hey, this is good news. This is some really good news. You're on national television with this artwork, and it's being covered globally. But even the media locally, do you think they want to pick it up? They don't do anything with it, Frank.
No, and that's been a struggle right from the beginning. And it does go back to the cultural war, because how do we spread the word? And that's why it was really encouraging when I saw all the interviews you were receiving. I knew some of them, like the NPR, would be questionable, but at the same time, if we can spread the word just a little bit on this and what the painting means and the journey that you've been through, it was all worth it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it was incredible. And my case, Frank, the whole lawsuit with the Smithsonian was front and center. I had it on this handout that we were handing out, and people could not believe it. I mean, you're talking about trying to puncture a veil down there in D.C., the swamp in D.C., that people, I had Laura Ingram's people come to the table. She didn't come, but her people, 3 people from her office, they're like, oh, we want prints. They came and bought prints. And I said, yeah, well, let me tell you what's going on. I told them the story. They stood there like, what?
Yeah.
They could not believe it. So the story of the case is reaching the people, the right people, who now can look into it and be like, wow, this is going on. This is what's been going on for 2 years. Mm-hmm. This is the bias, and this is the same fight in the culture war. If our institutions, Frank, if our government-funded institutions that should be presenting the ideas from both sides are being controlled by these leftist ideologues, and they're editing our history, and we're just sitting by being kicked to the curb, it's ridiculous. So that whole fight that's going on, and it continues. My case obviously is at a whole new level, which is awesome. That I hope comes to the forefront, because that's bigger even than the image now.
Yes.
Because it just exposes the bias, the anti-Trump bias, anti-conservative bias, anti-Christian bias that's in this institution. That's just one institution of thousands, and we have to stop it. We have to fight, and we have to obviously win. We have to get a fair playing field for all sides of the argument.
Never been. Were you able to catch President Trump's speech?
Absolutely, and the vice president. Those are the 2 speeches I was able to go to, because when they spoke, they shut down the hub because of security. In other words, they would do a security sweep the night before. They lock you out. No one can get in there. And nothing happens. The whole place is on lockdown. So you go to the speech, and the vice president, he gave an incredible speech. It was an incredible speech from a faith perspective as a Christian. It was just amazing. And then President Trump was just blistering. he got up there and he just let rip, and that's all he did. And there we go. And for my family, my mother had flown in from Spain. She's here visiting, and she came, and we got her a pass back. She came, and we got up at like 5 in the morning to go and get a good seat in the arena, and we did. We were like, I don't know, within 60 feet of where President Trump was standing, and it was spectacular. It was absolutely spectacular to be there. And for my children, training them up, my young son, he was there, my 16-year-old daughter, she was so amazed and so moved and so changed by this event, change in her understanding, her ideas, her philosophy, her own political philosophy. You're training them up to be patriots, to stand for what we believe. It's about activism. We've got to be active. We've got to be involved in fights. We've got to be campaigning. We've got to be, convincing and persuading to our ideas.
Oh, Julian.
Who's taking over,
Yeah, you're breaking up just a little bit there, Julian. But I got to ask, because because it was over a 2-hour speech, did your family ever get bored? Because everything that I've read, people were energized right from the beginning to the end. Is that how you felt, or does a 2-hour plus speech go too long?
Well, I personally, I was so exhausted over the whole event because it was such a formidable ordeal for us that it was just, to me, I was exhausted throughout the whole event. It was just difficult. So getting up at 5 in the morning, having gone to bed at 12:30, already on a few hours, it was just exhausting for me. The whole thing was. So I was tired. I couldn't even fully enter into it. I had to, like an hour and 50 minutes into it, I had to go because of the hub was going to open. Oh. We had to get down there and get prepared. So I did the best that I could. As far as other people, all I know, they were cheering right to the end of the speech. Mm-hmm. The cheering went on and on and on, and I was like, man, these people have more energy than I do, because I was flat. I was exhausted, Frank. I told you, it took us 12 hours to drive home in a snowstorm. I'm just starting to recover now.
Oh, man. Julian Raven is our guest this morning. Were there any other than the speeches and obviously some of the coverage that you received, were there any other highlights that we should know about from CPAC?
Well, all I can say is that it was very encouraging for me, again, in my journey as a newborn citizen, to go to the heart of where the activists are. And this to me is what the painting is all about. Where the eagle is snatching the flag. It's that moment of action. That Trump is an action man. He's a doer. He's a builder. I've said this since the beginning. He sees something needs to be done, and he just gets it done. Just do. He's a doer. Mm-hmm. That's what builders are. They build. They do stuff. And so, in my journey as a conservative and getting involved as a conservative activist, yourself, it's frustrating sometimes. There's a lot of apathy you deal with. People don't know what to do. Well, you go to an event like this, and these are the people that are fighting. These are the people that are organizing. These are the people that are trying to see, what can we do? How can we press? How can we push? How can we fight in order to advance our cause? And to be in that environment, Frank, was such a blessing for me personally, such an honor, surrounded by all these, these are enormous organizations, and even in the hub, on all sides, it was C-SPAN or it was the NRA, all these activist organizations. It was for me, absolutely energizing. And how do we get this to the next place? And all the people that came up to me to say, all right, well, this is an incredible image. How can we help you? What can we do? Social media people, I've been in touch with them. Obviously, media people, Turning Point USA, which is that enormous youth organization on college campuses. How can we incorporate this into what we're doing? Just the energy to be part of the argument and the proclamation of our ideas and our beliefs, and what's Americanism is just huge. And so for me, it's an education, and to be part of that argument, to be part of that force now, seeing all the other people that are so active was extremely encouraging. And I hope locally we've got to do something. Mm-hmm. Locally, it's got to happen. If we're going to be here in Elmira, New York, I've tried to leave multiple times, given up trying to leave. God wants me to be here. I got to dig in. We've got to see change happen. We've got to see a change happen in our mindset and see America flourish in this area that is so downtrodden.
Julian Raven is our guest this morning. We've been talking about CPAC, but I want to get an update on the case against the Smithsonian. You can find out more about this and the CPAC at thetrumppainting.com, thetrumppainting.com. Julian, one of the things I've talked about so often when I mention you is that I think when people voted for Trump, and sadly we see this in the Second Amendment community, where, okay, Trump's in there, everything's fine, he's going to fight the swamp, we don't need to, that's his job, and that's a horrible mistake, and that's what I've always given you kudos for, because you said, Trump's busy, I'm going to fight the swamp myself, and that's exactly what you're doing with this case against the Smithsonian.
Well, yeah, where I am, right, can you hear me okay?
Yes, yep.
Just drove through a bad spot. Yeah, the Smithsonian, after my case was dismissed at the lower court, and, it was very discouraging to have that happen, but I don't know, I'm learning as I go along, but the truth of the matter is every case that doesn't have precedent is always dismissed. They always make a status quo ruling, and it has to be bumped up to the next level of courts, the appeals courts, where finally precedent cases are established. So did that come across clear? Did you hear me there?
Yep, I could hear you.
Yeah, so after getting dismissed, I'm like, okay, so what does this mean? And the dismissal, the ruling by the judge was just ridiculous, and I was very disappointed because I thought he'd be more, like I said, independent or objective. But then I don't know what constrains a judge, what obligations he has. He's forced to rule according to stare decisis, I think it is. It's that established precedent. So he has to rule. He can't. A lower court judge cannot make an independent ruling, basically. So it's got to be bumped up. So now I'm in Kavanaugh's court. I'm in the appeals court for the District of Columbia Circuit, and it's what's so funny is that the DOJ ran out of money because when Trump shut the government down, none of them could work. So I kept getting these emails from the lawyers. They say, "Oh, do you mind if we put this off because we run out of money and we can't even work as volunteers. We're not even allowed to do that." And they're like, and they have to motion the appeals court for more time, and the appeals court very rarely grants more time. They're very strict. But because the government was shut down, they granted them more time. And then they asked for more time again. And this was all happening around CPAC. So I'm like, I don't really care right now because I'm doing something else. I'll pick this up afterwards. So right now the DOJ they have a motion that they're crafting. They're going to file it in the next, I think it's by the 13th of March. They'll be filing a motion for summary affirmance, which means that
to be a lawyer. So how do you do all of this? How did you learn all of this?
The last 2 years, Frank, studying by myself in my little office, trying to understand it for myself because I want to fight this. This is a fight. This is my fight. Mm-hmm. This is my fight, and I got to be trained to fight it. I don't want someone else to fight it for me. I want to fight them. Mm-hmm. I want to fight them, and I want to beat them, and I want to show them that you people are a bunch of corrupt. You're a bunch of leftist ideologues. You're pirates that have pirated the ship. That you're steering it to your own disgusting ideology. You have no decency. You can't be impartial. It's just wrong, and we have to stop it. And if this is my little corner, my battle, which it is, then I'm going to go and I'm going to learn how to fight, and I'm going to learn the arguments, and I'm going to learn what's going on, and I'll spend hours and hours and hours reading it, trying to understand it, asking God to help me, and He has. The Lord has helped me. I mean, it's amazing what I've learned and what I've understood. And I've come to a place, I know, Frank, without a shadow of a doubt, I know that I'm right. And most people think, well, you can't be right. You're nobody. You're a nobody. You're just a nothing. You're not even a lawyer, just a this. And then, but I know that I'm right. And it's going to take the Supreme Court. When it forces them to say, no, actually, the Smithsonian is not part of the federal government, it's going to be historic, Frank.
Yes.
Absolutely historic.
Oh, I believe it. And that's why I'm so excited, and we've kept updated with you on the case, because it's one of those things to watch it unfold has just been breathtaking from the beginning to the end. It's always a new twist and turn that always seems to work out for the best in the long run, even if it doesn't seem that way maybe at first. But what?
Right, and it is, and it's very discouraging. I've had very, very dark moments, very discouraging, just like total despair. Just like, 2 years fighting this and then resolving in your heart, it might be 4 years. And I'm like, oh, my goodness, 4 years. But then slowly but surely, Frank, I got used to those ideas, and now I'm free. I'm at peace with that. I'm like, I can wait 4 years because the decision can be life-changing, and that's what has to happen. So it's very exciting in that sense. I'm waiting for this motion that the DOJ will file of summary affirmance, and I'm going to oppose that motion. I get to re-argue my case, why they're completely they're off the wall. You've got to read it. If you've not, and you've got to go to the TrumpPainting.com. You go to the activism tab, and there are all the documents listed there, PDF readable formats, and you can read the judge's decision at the lower court. You know, and like I said, it was a very disappointing decision. He says some of the daftest things. He just says it. It's not even legal. He just says these daft things, and you're like, what? Why did you do that? But he unfortunately he's a young, he's a conservative Trump-appointed judge, but he's 38 years old. He's just a fresh, brand new judge. He's a brand new player on the field, and he just made a status quo swamp decision, Frank, that just was so disappointing. But it's also very good because when you read it, you're like, this is going to be overturned. And I told you that that guy from a law school out in Washington or something like that, he said he argued my case as a Supreme Court brief in a mock Supreme Court trial. And he said there's no way you cannot prevail in his opinion. He says it's just ridiculous what they've said, but it's got to wait its turn for the judges to say, this is absolutely ridiculous. This is what the Smithsonian is, and the rest of the case will fall into line. And that's what I'm waiting for. And I just have to be patient. I have to respond to the DOJ within the next month once they file their motion, and I'm going to pound them again.
Did you ever think the journey would lead to what it is here in March of 2019?
No, I did. No idea, Frank. Right. No idea. No idea. No. Just no idea. No idea. And years. And Frank, at CPAC, when people came up and saw the painting and they started reading the information, I'd say to them, I painted this in 2015 before he was even the nominee.
Right.
They froze. Their faces, like the jaw hit the ground. They're like, what? They had to take a double take. They're like, what? Because it looked like it was painted for CPAC. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
It's just so powerful, and it was so powerfully presented. The lighting, you got to see it with the new lighting, Frank. And that locally, it's like you think that the local people, you think people locally would say, man, this painting with all the national, international coverage, and all that, we'd want to honor and show it, give it public recognition locally. You'd think that would be the case because thousands of people locally haven't seen it. What led up to my frustration, Frank, before I went to CPAC or even got accepted, I had people coming into my studio throughout the winter. Families would come in, individuals would come in. I had a veteran come in here and there. I had people coming in, and this one woman was outraged. She's like, what is this doing here? Yeah. Why is it here in this freezing studio? And she was outraged. And then this young veteran who was fresh off the field from, I think it was Afghanistan, he'd come in clapping he saw it all by himself with Bob Brill, the other veteran, clapping and just cheering this thing. And you're like, I thought, wow, that's so beautiful. But then I'm angry because you're like, the blacklisting and the blackout, but locally, and the people locally don't do anything other than, the little subtle, quiet acknowledgement. But this thing should be seen by thousands of people. It's such an encouragement. Art should be part of our conversation. And what happens? It sits in my freezing cold studio.
Julian Raven has been our guest this morning. Julian, I know you got to go. I've kept you long. But before we go, we've talked about the TrumpPainting.com. That's the best place to find out more. How can people help? Because I think the important thing is to remember you're doing this all out of pocket. This is all on your own. How can people help?
Well, on that note, I wanted to say going to CPAC cost me money I did not have. Right. And I wanted just to say this is where my mother, I borrowed money to do this from my mother. She was like, and she's not in a position to do it. She was like the widow's mite. She had a little bit of money that she could lend me. My mother stepped up to the plate. She saw how important it was. She helped. She just alone. My family, my wife, my children, my wife Gloria, my children Joanna, who's in Liberty studying. She came up, but mainly Victoria, who was here to help me. My son Jeremiah. Our family pulled together. We pulled this off. This is an American journey. It's an American story. We don't have the means. This is just all grit, hard work, renting a truck, loading this thing, driving these miles, you're in this massive conference center with these enormous organizations, multi-million-dollar organizations, all these, and there I am with my 16-year-old daughter carrying this huge painting and setting it up. I mean, Frank, it's beautiful. It made me, so what can people do to support? I thank God we had loads of people come up. They bought prints at the event. It was great. But it's like enough money to put gas in, fill up a huge truck of gas. It cost $250 of diesel fuel just to get there and back. So it was, thank God we had it. We had money to buy food there and that type of thing. You cover some costs, but nothing. It's nowhere near the cost of the event. And to defray the costs, people to buy, you can go onto the website, buy the prints, and I have them. I have inexpensive ones, and I have now high-quality, archival quality ones, and will have more prints like that are these are collectibles now, that they're collectibles to last 100 years. But, people to support as they can and to tell people and to try and, the problem in the conservative movement that we have, and this was part of the problem there again, is that the art world, unless artwork is recognized by people who are recognized, like individuals who have a voice and who are, they're movers and shakers, or they're people of importance, the art just floats. It doesn't, and we need people to publicly recognize the artwork. They need to stand with it. They need to show that this is a part of our history in this area. It is. And whether they like Trump or not, this is a part of our story. This is an American story, and unless people acknowledge it and stand there and acknowledge, art never grows and never gets anywhere until it's recognized by people who have the ability to recognize it and cause out. Because you can have people. It's so sad, but some art in this world needs people to tell them that it's good. Mm-hmm. You need an official to tell you this is a good painting. Oh, it's a great painting then. My painting, thank God, I painted in such a way that a child, and we had children there looking at it, and I painted it in a style that children could respond to it. That is what we're dealing with. And so, how can they help, Frank? Go to the website, buy prints, support it as you can, tell people about it, try and get a venue locally. I'd love to show this locally again, properly, the way it should be. And as a result of that, that's what we need. We need it to be seen, and so the journey can continue and other people can enjoy it, for goodness sakes.
That's right. Julian Raven has been our guest this morning. Again, it's thetrumppainting.com. Also find it on Facebook, but thetrumppainting.com. Julian, as always, of course, best of luck. Keep us updated on anything new that unfolds, because we wait patiently for the updates. We love to hear them.
Well, I will do that, and like I said, it's an incredible journey, and I want to take this on a national tour. So the listeners that you have across the country, if they want to see it where they are, call me, get in touch with me. I will drive it out west. I will go across the country and set it up so that other people and other patriots and other Americans can see this work of art and enjoy it, because art changes things. Beauty is. One guy at the conference, Frank, he said, beauty is not partisan. He said, it's so beautiful. He said, beauty is not partisan, and beauty changes people's lives. It enriches our lives. It betters our lives, makes us better people. So if people want it to be shown out west, just give me a call.
Great. Julian, thanks so much for being on the show. Let's talk soon.
All right, my friend. Thank you, Frank,
Thanks.
for everything. Appreciate it. God bless you, and we'll speak soon then.
You too. Thanks, Julian. Bye.
Bye-bye.